Okay, it's the top of the hour. Can everyone can hear me well? Good audio. Thank you. Hello from Montana. Great. So glad you're here. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to CIID's fall webinar. It's sort of partly sunny and 70 degrees exactly here, and I'm thrilled about it. Whatever fall looks like in your location in our country, I hope you're enjoying it. We're so glad that you're all here to talk about putting IDEA data to use. Today, we're joined by two talented colleagues. They put together this presentation, Sarah Sinani and Nathan Clinton. Sarah is a CIID TA provider with deep expertise in theoretical frameworks for data integration. She brings a history of 7 years of success as a state data manager in Nebraska. She's really awesome to work with. Nathan is lead developer on Generate and a data architect for CEDS. Prior to this role, he spent 10 years implementing data standards through data system architecture in Washington State. I've only recently begun to work with Nathan. It's been a joy. I think we have just the right people to lead this call. As we begin today, I invite you to recall or recenter on one of our common purposes. That is, we spend our resources to collect and manage data in order to use it. And we use it for accountability, and we use it to ensure that each and every child in this country has an equitable opportunity to succeed in our schools. We've grown in our capacity to use data over time, and we're here today to discuss another revolution in technology and in process that we will lead together to increase our data use capacity to make further meaningful change, to make further meaningful difference in the lives of educators and students. So let's generate some data engagement, excuse the pun. Sarah, would you kick us off with reviewing our agenda?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that glowing introduction. As Dan mentioned, we're really going to focus today on data use. So we have all of this data now. How do we use it? So we're hoping that this will be both an informative and exciting webinar on data use and data engagement. I'm going to kick things off by talking about where we've been and where we currently are in terms of data use, and then Nathan will take us into the future. So when we look at current data use and the current data use landscape, really think about where we currently are and how we're currently using data. Specifically for us at CIID, we're talking about the data use opportunities you can find in Generate. And then we'll look at the data and the data use potential when your data are integrated using the CEDS format. After we talk about where we've been and where we would like to go, we'll show you where we want to go further by using data in the CEDS data warehouse structure and the power of using a business intelligence tool for analytics and visualization. And finally, what does the future look like? How can the CEDS open source community help bring all of this home for you to use to drive policy rather than just meet the regulatory demands? So when we think about our capacity and infrastructure to create data engagement tools, we've seen a lot of change over the past 20 years. 20 years ago or so, we had to bring in the right person into the office to create visuals. And for most of us, that was in Excel. And then more of us built our skills in Excel, and we saw an explosion of simple charts and graphs that we used to talk about the data that we had. Most of these were developed and built around inquiries and data-driven decision making, which meant we were building them on the fly, and we were constantly having to recreate them when we needed to add in a new element or tweak the inputs. It was time-consuming to get everything in and to rearrange our graphs and to add in new inputs. And the visuals themselves were not extremely complex or dynamic. More recently now, states have begun to work with tools such as Microsoft Power BI, Tableau, and others in order to help meet the demands for deeper analytic tools. And the result has been an investment in infrastructure, training, and greater capacity to create tools that enable complex analysis while standardizing the language around the data visualizations and use. That being said, these types of tools come at a steep cost, both in terms of money as well as in terms of time. And that time would be spent trying to acclimate yourself to the tool itself and to train proper BI developers. We also have a historic use of data for the purpose of ensuring and improving the quality of the data that we have. Primarily, data visualization tools have been used to drive program improvement, and because of that reason, they're most commonly ad hoc. So, in thinking about that previous slide where we talk about where we are and where we have been, we want to know more about what's going on where you are in terms of data use tools. So we set up a couple of polls, and we'd like you to tell us which tools you're personally using to engage with for data use. For example, Excel, Power BI, Tableau. Feel free to add more in the comments if there's a different tool you're using. And then do your data quality review procedures include data visualization? And we'll give you a minute or two to answer before we move forward. Looks like we're getting a few additional resources in the chat. Okay. I think we've got quite a few answers. So let's move forward. Okay. So let's take a small step back from what we just talked about. Here we're going to show you, we're going to take this step back to kind of level set how data are prepared for use in data analytic tools. And we're going to walk through specifically the data flow process for Generate, so we can talk more on a more level playing field about the reports that we currently have and how we're currently using data. Nathan, I think this one we have to, yeah, okay. So in the data flow process for Generate specifically, the data flow from the state data systems, and they're integrated into a state longitudinal data system. From there, the data go through an ETL process that transforms the data into CEDS elements and option sets. And then they're loaded into the CEDS integrated data store. From the integrated data store, they are moved to the CEDS warehouse, and then they're ready for use in the EDFACS reporting, as well as additional reports that we'll show you using modern business intelligence tools. So in the process of creating all the outputs for the reports that we just saw there, that's all driven by CEDS. And this means that we're defining how we do reporting using the CEDS as the language and the CEDS Connect tool to drive the reporting requirements. In this way, we're using CEDS Align and Connect process as a way to define what it is you're trying to report. Giving you a little teaser to the meat of this webinar and the potential use for data, the real value of going through this process of aligning to CEDS and then using the connections is that it allows you to define what your report is in a public way. And if you share your report out to anyone who has a CEDS warehouse, and if they have used the CEDS Align tool to align their data, they can see how the data from their source system is being translated through the CEDS architecture into the reports. This acts as a translation layer. So as you use CEDS and to align your data to the CEDS elements, once we get to more dynamic reports, you can see from your source system how that is being translated into these reports, which makes them a little bit more user-friendly and gives you a little bit better understanding of the data itself. So now that we've talked about how the data get into the reports that you can find on Generate, let's talk about what's there. First and foremost are the EdFacts reports. And these allow you to see your EdFacts data that you would typically submit in a CVS format in a readable way. So you can go in, you can click on the EdFacts reports, and you can actually read what your data are telling you. And then in our reports library, we have a couple of different types of reports. We have validation reports, and these reports are aggregate data. And we have student information reports, which use the raw data that you have imported into Generate. All of these are flat files from data migrated into Generate for EdFacts reporting. And they all will help you verify and validate your data prior to reporting. But they're not specifically dynamic. They won't help you in additional analytics. You can see here that our reports library, we do have about a dozen or so reports that will allow you to use the data more strictly than just EdFacts reporting. And these type of reports provide some utility to help achieve higher data quality. But as we're going to demonstrate, as Nathan's going to demonstrate, we're starting to branch out now into more complex analytics. And we're ready to take that next step into these deeper analytics and using these tools with you guys all as partners. So get ready to be totally impressed and really excited about what we can and possibly will be doing in the future, and start thinking about all the ways that you would like to use data in order to inform policy rather than just fit all of the requirements for reporting that we currently have. Nathan, I'm going to let you take it over now.
Great. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about the potential not only of Generate, but the data architecture that it's built on, the CDS data warehouse in particular. So firstly, it's because it's a CDS-based data warehouse, all the data that you load in there is transformed into CDS, and we're usually very strict about definitions and option sets. And that's important because that makes your data very uniform, state to state. When you map to CDS, that data, the definition of that data is the same. So that means it's really easy then to also link your data using these option sets and codes across the entire domain of across several domains of data. And that's really CEDS's strong suit, right? It's a giant education data dictionary at its roots. And the CDS data warehouse is an implementation of that dictionary. And because of that uniformity, and that combined with the structure of the CDS data warehouse, we're able to link that data together rapidly. So meaning I can go from student assessment data to student discipline data to their program data and their enrollment data, fairly minimal effort. And we're also able to link then teacher data to that student data. And you could do that at the school level, and even actually go down to the course level, the course section level, linking individual students to the teachers that are teaching them. And with all this data that's integrated, we can quickly pull together data for analytical purposes. And that's usually the hardest part when you're putting together BI tools or BI resources. Getting the right data generally takes as much time or more time than you spend actually building the analytic. So we put together an actual sample Power BI report to demonstrate what this slide means. And so to kind of dive in before I show you the actual example, I want to set up the story. So we wanted to correlate what special education data with special education students and their discipline data, and compare that to student-teacher ratios, all based on demographics, and be able to filter down to their assessment performance levels. We also wanted to kind of demonstrate the power of these new analytical tools. You know, compared to Excel, there's a lot you can do with Power BI that you can't with Excel. So we just took one of the more impressive features and put it into this report. It's a map. So you can see how data is distributed across the state. Now, before I show you the report, just wanted to say that this is purely fictional data. We had to have a physical location, so we chose North Carolina, but all the actual data was randomly generated using a tool that we developed for Generate to help us in testing that system. But it's completely randomized. So that said, because it's not real data, it's not going to look realistic. So don't expect the numbers to make any sense. It's really just there to show you what kind of functionality there is. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this. And I'm going to bring up my report, if I can find it. Just a moment. I apologize for the wait. There we go. Share. Okay. So this is a report that was developed by a small team. It took maybe 8 hours to both gather the data and to build the analytic itself. So we have the data broken into 2 sheets, and we're looking at just IDEA students. And these are data that we would traditionally then feed into pretty much the entire set of IDEA EdFacts files. We've got discipline data, assessment data, staff data, and then demographics of the students within. So just to give you an idea, we're looking at the very top, we have a filter that allows you to select one or multiple assessments. I'm just going to look across all assessments for now, but then you can also filter down by performance levels of students and how well they scored on each of those assessment subjects. And these are the state assessments that we would then submit in EdFacts, the 175 through 189 assessment files. So we have that data linked to, we have that data linked to discipline data on this slide. So we can slice and dice all the IDA students and all the discipline incidents for this particular school year by disability type, by economic disadvantage status, and by race. And then we took all of this data and we scattered it across the map of North Carolina. Now this is just by zip code, but you could actually define this with school district shapes. It takes a little more work to do that, but it's possible to do that. But what this gives you is an understanding, a deeper understanding of where, within what subgroup of students are we seeing the most discipline incidents, and then where those discipline incidents are occurring within the state. If we want to filter down by any of the subgroups, everything on this page is linked together. So if I just want to see just the students with autism, you just click the autism button here and you can see the distribution of all that across all of these other slices of data. including the map. If I want to see for just one district, by the way, this map is color-coded yellow, meaning the least number of discipline incidents, and blue being the highest number of discipline incidents. So if I take this one here, you can see there are 118 students, IDA students, with a discipline count of 6. There were 6 incidents for these students within the year. Now, we also compared that. So same information, right? Same slices and dices that you, as of the previous slide, up on there on the left. But now we're looking at the pupil to teacher ratio. And these are special ed teachers. So now we can start to see, okay, well, how does the discipline compare to the availability of staff, like the number of staff that are teaching students? And is there a way to correlate the increased number of staff to the outcomes? Lastly, we have a data dictionary, and this is where you can link to the CEDS connection that Sarah mentioned earlier. We just have just some basic definitions of the metrics that we're using, but normally, and we will update this to do that, normally we would provide a link to the CEDS connection here so that anybody can go and look at the report requirements that went behind developing this report, as well as the CEDS elements, their definitions, the option sets and their definitions, and then be able to use that connection to overlay across their data systems so they can get an idea of if they were going to use this report loaded into CEDS, what data would actually be fueling this report. So what I wanted to highlight here really is that we were able to jump in and build this. Like I said, it was 3 people combined total of about 8 hours to build this. That's pretty fast, right? We didn't have to spend a whole lot of time producing the data. And if you have a trained person in Power BI, building the analytics can go really quickly as well. And there are a lot of different tools that are, I mean, we just are scratching the surface of the kind of capabilities you can add to your reports, but we wanted to just show you an example. And like I said, this is all just based on stuff that's already in Generate. So any state that has loaded their IDEA data into Generate could use this report. And you may be saying to yourself, well, okay, our state, we have a longitudinal data system, or we have a data warehouse. I can already do this. I already have Power BI. I can start producing these kinds of reports. But there's one main differentiator between a state's proprietary SLDS and what we have here. And I'm going to talk about that in our vision for what's to come. But to do that, Darren, if you could please reshare the slides. So I want to talk about what that differentiator is. Like, what is the vision for the future now that we have a standardized data warehouse? So first, I'd like to just say the more data that you load into a warehouse, the more capabilities you have. So CEDS spans the entire education spectrum, everything from early learning up through post-secondary into workforce and beyond. Secondly, and this is where we really start to see the differentiation, everything CEDS is open source, including the data warehouse. This means that it can evolve, and it's not just CIID or CEDS that can do that expansion. The community of users can expand these models. And that's where we have a what we call the CEDS open source community. And this is a group of CEDS states that are implementing or interested in CEDS. It includes vendors. And we have now 2 states in particular that are using this data warehouse outside of the scope of Generate, building that as their future state longitudinal data system. And really, when we started, Generate was just kind of that seed to get to the point where we the rest of the states could see the potential for CDS as a warehouse. And we wanted this open source community to be a place where people can share. Right? So we have this, what we call a distributed development model, right? Where if one state expands the model, creates a resource, creates an enhancement, they can share that back out to the community. And then those other states can take that and further enhance it, change it, and share that back out with the community as well. And it's not just a hub, right? It's not just a way of sharing code. There's an actual community of people who talk and share and guide. So there are monthly meetings, for instance, that we have that everybody is invited to, where we can talk about, kind of the how questions people have, what people are doing, also sharing out news about CDS and anything that may have been made recently available, including anything that was posted to the shared repository of resources for CDS. But it's not, again, just the models. We also have a place where analysts can share analytics, share reports. If you're a Tableau state and you want to share out your Tableau reports for, I don't know, SGP, student growth percentile, you can take that, build it on the CDS data warehouse, and then post it out to the community, and then it just starts to evolve from there. And CDS is there to support you as well. I mean, we do want to be there to help you move this along. We have the ability to provide assistance, help you learn, help kind of facilitate the community. So it has the potential of being a very rich community with a lot of resources that build over time and evolve with the changing needs of education. And the presenter, that model, sorry, the Power BI report that I just showed you is actually posted out to the link that Bill just posted into chat. We took that and it is now the seed to invite others to start sharing out any reports that you may develop. So this is a call to action. If you are a Generate state and you have data in a CDS data warehouse, even if you're not a Generate state, if you're one of the states that's using CDS as just an SLDS, build some reports and share them out to the community. This is how we start to build that set of resources and start to evolve our capabilities. Also, that demo that we showed was developed by the Center for the Integration of IDA Data, CIID. But CIID will also, over the next year or two, be developing more flushed out, community-driven reports. And we'll be posting those out to the community, open source community as well. So if you're interested, okay, it looks like there's some questions that we may want to go over first.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. A technical question from June. Does it require you to have a Power BI to use this reporting feature and Generate? Could you speak a little bit to the integration or intersection of the reporting tools, the business intelligence tools, and Generate itself?
Yeah, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. Just scratch that. But Power BI, Tableau, these more advanced BI tools do have a licensing cost associated with them. To be able to get the developer, and actually there may be others on here that know the pricing model better than me, but I think to get the developer tool, it's fairly inexpensive to get that. But then you also need licenses to be able to view reports. So there is an expense with developing on top of these tools. And that's pretty universal, right? Power BI, you have to pay to play. Tableau, you pay to play. SAS, you pay to play. But from what we've seen, most of these states have one or more of these tools. And particularly in education, the pricing models tend to get slimmed down. Yes, like John Shake just mentioned that the discount for education is usually 80% for Power BI. So you can, since we're all in education, you could get these tools fairly inexpensively. But yes, there is definitely a pricing model that goes along with it.
Any other technical questions out there? We'd certainly welcome them. I have a few questions of my own to pose to the group, if you guys don't mind.
Go for it.
So far as getting started, Nate, states may or may not have a BI tool. To align to CEDS is just the work that you put in, in coordination with Generate. But who would you need at the table in order to get started with this?
Good question.
Just to do a sample or something like that, to try it out.
So first you would need a program person, somebody who really understands the data, right? Because they are going to drive the, what it is you're trying to accomplish with the analytic. You would want somebody who has experience with these tools, who can actually spend the time, knows how to use these tools. Some agencies have staff on hand who have that experience. Where I came from in Washington State, we used Tableau, and we had 5 or 6 staff who were just constantly creating Tableau reports and posting those out, helping program staff use their data. Now, if you don't have any of those tools, again, you could always use Excel. Does have the capability of connecting to the warehouse, pulling data, but you do need to have the ability to do those, query the data out of the warehouse. So it may also be good to have a technical person or a database administrator available to answer any questions around access, because typically we haven't had any requests yet, maybe a few here and there, for direct state staff accessing the Generate or the CDS warehouse directly to build reports. So your database administrator should be able to provide you with those access rights and give you all the connection info. So I'd say you would want those 3 people involved in any kind of project.
Mm-hmm. So in order for a state to upload their CEDS aligned data to the tool that you've posted as a seed, those 3 people would need to collaborate.
Yes, and that's in the development of the report. If you wanted to post your report to the open source community, we use a tool called GitHub, and it's created for software development, but you can share pretty much anything through it. Think of it as a more advanced version of SharePoint, but better. Because it's geared towards software development, it would probably be good to get someone who has experience with these kinds of tools, Git in particular, or GitHub, to help you actually move that file up to the website. And we do also have links later on in this presentation to help you get started in any of these areas. If you want to get started on Tableau or Power BI or even GitHub, we have some links at the very end to kind of just get you started.
We have a few more questions that have come in on the technical side. Chris Thacker has asked, are these reports based off the EDFACS files, or do they require a different source format?
So it's based on the data in the CDS data warehouse. So there's CDS element names and option sets. But the report that we built for this demo is what Generate uses to produce the EDFACS reports. So there's Generate does an additional layer of transformation on that student level data in the CDS warehouse to produce the actual final EDFACS file. So this is one step removed from EDFACS, but it's the same data.
Yeah, and along with that, Nathan, when we were building the demo file, in Power BI. We talked about using just the EdFacts data for now for this report because we wanted to be able to show that the EdFacts data that you're preparing right now is the kind of data that we can use as a very simple base to build off of. But you would also see that we added assessment information in there, so you could sort by assessment, by proficiency level, by the subject matter. And from there, a program person could say, I want to know what it also looks like, let's say, with what level of degree the teacher had. So not just student to teacher ratio, but how about master's levels teachers to student ratio? And if you had that aligned through CEDS, you could easily add that element in as a filter. So while we based it off of EdFacts data and EdFacts files, as Nathan said, it could be expanded to anything that you have put into the CEDS data warehouse.
Right, and just to give you an idea of how much the warehouse has expanded since Generate. Generate uses, I would say, maybe 7 or 8 what we call fact tables, which is where we connect students with program details and discipline incidents. So different ways of analyzing the data. Since then, we've had states add 6 more fact tables, 3 within the K-12 domain, talking about program participation, and we also have 3 tables in the post-secondary domain as well, academic records and awards. We also are in process to, we've already designed 3 more fact tables. And those will be published, I'm not sure exactly when, but probably in the near future, specifically around special education, a more deep dive into special education than what we have for EdFacts. We also have some around, I'm trying to remember what it is. I think it's, I'm sorry, my mind is going blank. I think it's around the economic disadvantage information and some information that we're pulling in from additional systems, federal systems. We also have one specifically about adult education that we're developing. So, and that's all been within about the past year and a half, those tables have been developed.
Thanks, Nathan. I just want to reiterate that this is, I think, a unique opportunity, an ecosystem or an opportunity that we haven't seen one quite like it yet. Alongside the GitHub source information, where there's potential to be myriad reports for SPP APR, for LEA profiles, for 618 public reporting. There can be very niche reports and multiple versions of them that may work for different states. So we hope to see, and we will support the flourishing of a GitHub and perhaps like a program side community where development talks can happen, communities can grow around the visualization, development of tools for specific interests. What we hope to see is that there's going to be competition and collaboration, so to speak, that the cream will rise to the top. And through this collaboration and efforts across states, that states are going to get where they need to go in a way that they perhaps can't quite envision yet, or no one yet has envisioned. So I think this is a special opportunity. One question has been, go ahead, Nathan.
Well, I'd just also like to mention that the vendor community, I think it's something I mentioned, just touched on lightly earlier, but the vendor community actually has been participating in the open source community. And that's great because there's there's only so much capacity in state agencies and us on our side as well, on the CDS side, on the CIID side. And there are 50 states, right? And the vendor community is starting to step in to learn about the warehouse, learn about the reporting needs, and start to develop expertise for things like data integration, and also reporting, right? And so I don't think there are any specific vendor tools that are on the market yet, but I would not be surprised to see them starting to appear. And the great thing about that is it just helps us all deal with the resource gap, right? And not having to develop everything from scratch. So I think we have a lot to see in terms of the vendor community coming into this space as well.
Just checking if there are any more technical questions from the chat. And I want to invite you, both of you, once more to think out loud, I think, about how states can get started and what needs to come into alignment for a state to be successful in this way.
And if we don't hear anything, please feel free to post something in chat or speak up. But we do have resources that can help you get started. I mentioned the website where the code that we're working on is posted. So that's the open source community link right there, the github.com/CDS standards. If you go there, you'll see everything under the CDS umbrella that's made public, from the data warehouse to CDS data elements, to other data models, as well as the CDS open source community collaborative exchange. And the collaborative exchange is where program people, analysts can share the resources that they develop. And it's also where our demo from this meeting is posted. If you go out to that link, you will be able to find the Power BI file that we used today, and you should be able to download it directly. And I'll even just later on, I'll post in chat the link directly to the file so that you don't have to navigate to it. Any other questions? Okay. Just additional resources I just wanted to point out. Here's a link to the CDS website, the CIID website, where under which Generate was developed, CDS, and then we have some entry-level pages where you can at least learn how to learn about the tools that are out there. All right, that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you, Nathan. We'll close out this afternoon. We really appreciate everyone participating. I think we've all sat in person in the past at some conferences and seen the great data visualizations, data tools, data use tools that states have developed. And sometimes we're in our own states working on our own efforts, and we're just blown away by the work that our colleagues do across the country. And we wonder to ourselves, I wonder if we could do something like that. And this is the on-ramp, I think, for saying yes to that question. So once again, thanks to all the presenters, and thanks to all the participants who joined us today. Have a great Monday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Take care, everyone. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Travis. Travis has just posted in the chat a link to our webinar evaluation. We would greatly appreciate if you took the time right now so that you can check it off your list to participate in our evaluation. Thank you.
Lastly, I just posted I just sent it to Dan. Let me post it to everybody. The It's the demo Power BI report, direct link to the file.
Thanks, Nathan. Take care, everyone.